Hey guys, welcome to today's podcast episode. Today we're joined with Louis. Louis, thank you so much for joining us today. Could you give us a quick breakdown who you are, what you do, and we can pick it up from there?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. So, the quick breakdown, Louis, I help people build an aligned coaching business. Online coaches specifically, not necessarily fitness coaches. I know that's mainly the audience here, but coaches in general. So I help people build an aligned coaching business, and pretty much we can go way deeper into this. But what that really means is when you have a business where you are going where your clients want to go anyway, you're doing shit that you love, and you're all kind of going in the same direction. That's alignment, right? That's physically alignment, and that's what alignment means. And that's an aligned business, and it comes with a lot of benefits, and I'm sure we'll be getting deep into those in this podcast.
Yeah, it's a powerful one, and one thing I thought no better time in terms of starting this was for you, and for some reason that kind of story, that kind of post and stories kind of stuck for me. I remember being, I know we spoke a little bit off before we started, but I remember being in a similar space, and I remember seeing one of your kind of very first like OG posts around. It might have been somewhere in Spain. It might have been Sevilla, like the long copy. You're like, I'm about to go to Sevilla. I remember reading that. It might be saved somewhere. I was like, this guy's done it. He's years ahead. So like that kind of thing, full transparency was the one I was like, it's possible in terms of making this happen. So that's been really inspirational and like probably really cool to start off on that. How did
Wow.
that?
You remember that post from 5 years? Well, now longer probably. I was actually on.
It's yeah, it's really stuck with me. Like it's like I really want to travel, I really want to do that. So like all the stuff you were doing, I was like that. There's some guy doing it.
Wow, yeah, it's Valencia actually, and I had the most amazing
Oh,
time in Valencia. And
amazing.
yeah, that was during COVID times, wasn't it? And that was when that was when it all came together for me. I remember sitting at that coffee shop where the picture's taken. I remember sitting in that coffee shop and actually potentially having a few tears of joy there because I was just looking around thinking, wow, I did it. I'm in Spain. I've got nowhere to go and no flight home. I fucking did it. But wow, that's crazy. Thank you so much.
Um, how so for a lot of people, like I guess for early days, people are doing the work, they're showing up, they're creating content, they're putting reels. How did you have that kind of faith it'd all pay off and you'd get there? Like how do you get that to that point?
Wow, we're taking this in a different direction than I thought. This is cool. Okay. Yeah, so back then, I actually remember my mindset completely because actually remember I would always speak to my dad about, business and what was going on. And I vividly remember telling him this. This might sound weird to people, but this was my mindset. And I know it's not as serious as I make it sound, but this was my mindset. And I said to him, because I went through so many years of things moving really, really slowly, having very, very, very little money because I was like, I brought my PT hours down to make sure that I had enough time for the online coaching and stuff like that. And for ages, I was just completely clueless, to be honest. And I was just like making, but not even making 2K a month for months and months on end. And obviously, as everyone who's listening knows, it's more the fear of what if this never comes off that stops people, isn't it? It's not so much, most of the time, it's not so much the reality of the situation in that moment. It's like, fuck, nothing's changed for months. Is this ever going to happen? I was seeing my friends getting like, you know, getting paid more and stuff like that, and you can't help but compare yourself a little bit, and you're wondering, am I ever going to make any real money here? And the one thing that I always said, and I remember saying it to my dad, I said, there's no way I'm going to fail because there's two options. I'm either going to die or I'm going to win. I know that sounds so weird. Maybe it was from Get Rich and Die Trying 57, but that's what I said. I said, like, I know I'm not going to stop. There was no question of stopping because I knew what I wanted. I saw the opposite, the other option, right, of just like normal job, 9 to 5, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, well, I'm not having that. I'm not having that because I would be fucking bored. I prefer the chase. Even if I'm not winning, I prefer the chase than anything else. And I thought to myself, well, there's two options. I'm either going to keep moving forwards or keep trying until I win, or I'll actually die first because I'm not stopping because I like the game anyway. And actually, funnily enough, when I look back now, the times where I was most engaged day to day, when I didn't like zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the times where I was most engaged day to day were the times when I wasn't necessarily winning, but I was fighting. I was playing. I was playing the game and I was going forwards. It's the times when I actually, it's imagining like climbing a mountain and you actually kind of get to the top of one of the mountains and things are smooth for a bit. That's when I actually would find myself getting bored. So like the game, we're playing the fucking game anyway. So just keep playing the fucking game. That's what I was saying to myself at least.
It's such an interesting mindset, because I think if you ever, for me anyway, if I ever get swept up in a moment of like, oh, I'm needing to be at a certain point, I need to be there, that's when you lose the enjoyment of the day to day, and it's like you're in a point of building rather than.
Exactly. And I think as well, it's just realizing, and I know this is so cliche, but it's realizing that there is actually no completion. Like, I'm sure you've experienced it as well, but we've always had different numbers that we think is like crazy, and then we've hit them, and then nothing changes, and then we just want the next one, and we want the next one, and then our expectations raise. And of enough times, especially at this point now for me, and I've actually been up and down and back up and back down and back up again, which takes some time to do that. Enough times and you start to realize that nothing really changes, and it's about enjoying the actual game itself, because if there's no end point, which there isn't, well then there can't be a rush, because you can't rush if there's nowhere to go, you know.
What's the stuff you enjoy about the game? Is it particular tasks? Is it just.
So I think when I first was going up to like when on my first like way up to like hitting six figures for the first time, which was like the crazy number to me, um, I don't even think I questioned what I enjoyed, because I think without knowing it, well, yeah, definitely without knowing it at the time, I was actually mainly driven by a lot of insecurity, a lot of like wanting to prove people wrong and all this kind of stuff, because I was never very clever when I was younger. No one really thought I'd be able to do much, including myself. And then when I saw, fucking hell, this is working. I've got something I'm pretty good at here. I wanted to fucking prove people wrong and stuff. So like the first, that first way, I don't even think I gave myself space to look at what I enjoyed. I only enjoyed keeping score. Like I only enjoyed winning and like seeing the wins happening. I only enjoyed seeing that number go up. And funnily enough, I didn't even spend any money. Like I didn't even spend any money at all, really, because I had like this weird money mindset. I wouldn't spend any money. I was just like, it was all just going in my bank. It wasn't changing anything in my life, but it was just the scorekeeping. Money was keeping score for me, and I was just seeing it go up. And for some reason, I like the late nights. I like to be able to like to be grinding, because I felt like that was the thing that was teaching people, like showing people and stuff like that. So like up to then, I didn't even know, and it was just that I went through this funny phase. Once I'd hit that point, got to the six figures. At this point now, I was living in Dubai, and I was actually further than the guy that started this whole thing. I was further than I ever thought I would ever be at that point. That's where my mind was at, and I was like, oh my god, like my vision never even took me here, let alone past this. So at that point, that's when things started to go a little bit weird. I had a little bit too much. It was actually a lack of that insecurity that stopped driving me. And then I got to that point where I was like, what do I love here? And that put me down a bit of a weird path of trying to find things and stuff like that. But nowadays, the thing that I love the most is creating. Like that's by far the one bit that I fucking love is creating. And I've built my business around that love for creating. In positive psychology, one of the big things that they look into is your innate strengths. If you can set up your life and your business or whatever it is around your innate strengths, the strengths that you're born with, you're going to be better. You're going to enjoy life more. You're going to enjoy the thing more, and you're also going to get into flow state more. And when I understood mine was actually creativity, and then I looked back and I realized, fuck, it really is. Like I thought I did my innate strengths test, and you can do that on the internet really easy. It's called VIA Strengths Finder. I thought, oh, I'm gonna have some really cool ones here. I want leadership. I want hard work. I wanted all these cool masculine ones. And then the top one was creativity. I was like, what? And then I saw it and I was like, that's boring. And then I looked back and I thought to myself, actually, that makes a lot of sense. when I procrastinate, it's through being like when I productively procrastinate, it's through being creative and doing shit like that. All of this stuff. I realized that that was it. So now moving forward, I've built my business around the sole ability to be as creative as possible, and that is kind of the model of being an aligned coach, which I'm sure we'll get to, which allows you to be creative and use that for basically everything else.
Your one interesting one here as well, creativity and strengths. Do you find yourself more like on the spectrum of like different online coaches and different kind of business owners you probably know? Do you find yourself more towards the extroverted or kind of introverted, just late night, iPad, pen, just creating on your own, like deep music kind of thing? Are you more like, do you have that kind of extroverted energy, or just more like head down kind of work and get things done?
How would you say the extroverted one shows up in coaching, would you say? And I'll be able to answer it better.
Yeah, I guess more like networking events, more being around people. That's kind of
Mm,
the way I picture it
yeah.
anyway. I don't know how it would be though. Like it might be very different.
Yeah. To be honest, when we look at it like this, I'm probably closer to the introverted side. I This isn't a comment on coaches, this is a comment on human beings in general. Most human beings are followers, and most human beings don't think for themselves, and they don't give themselves the space and time to have original thoughts. And most people don't even get to the level of realizing that part about themselves, let alone having the original thoughts. They don't even realize that they're not. They're just following the crowd. And although I would actually probably say I'm mainly an extrovert, I don't actually know because I feel like I'm both. But I think, but all people do that. I don't know which one I am. But in terms of this, I'm 100% an introvert. I go off the beaten path, and I have always gone off the beaten path. As soon as everyone's doing one thing, I get bored of it. I don't want to follow the path. I don't want to follow the crowd, and I try and spend time learning from people that no one's learning from, or looking in areas that no one's looking in, and reading in spaces that no one's reading in. And because creativity isn't it is really just joining the dots of multiple things, right? You can't really be that creative if you're only in one field alone, because you can, but everyone else has that information. It's not going to be that different. Soon as you're looking in other areas and other places that may not have an obvious link initially, now you have the ability to be creative because you're joining the dots between, for example, this is an obvious one, but psychology and fitness, or peak performance and spirituality, and you're able to join the dots between these and see how they entwine, because almost everything does. And that's what unlocks the ability to be creative. So for me, yeah, I don't speak to a lot of coaches because I find the majority of coaches are sheep. Along with the majority of people, it's not even towards coaches, it's just the majority of people are sheep, and it bores me. I like to, there's select few, but I like to learn in different places that aren't even coaches, and yeah, bring that all together. And yeah, one of the things that I do a lot is spend a lot of time alone with my own thoughts, just putting them together. As soon as I slow down, all that happens is shit bubbles to the surface, and I find myself writing and writing and writing, whether it's like with a keyboard or a pen, I'm writing, I'm having a cigar and I'm writing, shit's just coming to me. So yeah, definitely the introverted side of things.
Yeah, the only reason I thought it'd be interesting is because I think, especially when I was getting into coaching, is you often think, oh, you need to be super extroverted to actually like make it in this space. So you're in Dubai, you have a six-figure fitness business, you're living the dream. What are the thoughts going through then at that point? Like, what's the decision you mentioned? Like the happiness not being like not the fulfillment, not quite being. What do you think?
Yeah.
Where was that from?
Yeah. So I maybe the last 5 years up until that point was truly dedicated to building the business. I know that people are doing that in way quicker now, but it took me a long time. Um, it was truly, truly dedicated to that. Right, I was locked in. I was at home. I chose to net like I chose to not move out when other people were moving out because I wanted to just lock in. I didn't want any distractions till I got to that point. And I was being driven. I didn't know it at the time, but I was being driven by insecurity. I was being driven by that feeling of wanting to show people and stuff like that. And that drive is very powerful, but it's also very damaging. Like when you have that drive, you can't be creative very well because you're so fearful of rocking the boat. When there's so much rides in your own perception, it's not real in reality, but in your own perception, when so much rides on getting there, and your ego, your sense of like worth and self and all of this rides on getting there, you're so afraid to fuck up. You're so rigid. You're so scared. You don't have the ability to be creative, and you won't. So during that entire time, I was just driving towards that number, right? By the time I hit it, I actually remember the day I got video of it because it was literally like the last 2 days of the year. I was with Kieran, TMP Kieran. We was living together at the time, I think. And it just ticked it over, just the final day of the year or something. And I've got the video, we're celebrating and stuff. It was crazy. It was so cool. And then we went into that year. Now I'm living in Dubai. I've been there for a month at this point. I hit 6 figures. I think that was the timeline. And then, it didn't take long for things to start to feel very different. That drive that I had of like that incessant need to move forwards and to always work started to slow down. I started to look at my business now, and it almost felt like it was the first time I'd seen it and felt it. And things just felt almost meaningless to me at that point. It really did. It felt kind like, what am I doing? Why? No disrespect to anyone else, but the feeling that I had was, why am I just helping people get abs? Like, who cares? That's what I was thinking, because I slowed down and I was able to step back, and I was able to realize, well, I realized for myself that I had stopped caring about this thing in its isolation of just getting lean and looking better and stuff like that. I'd stopped caring about that a long time ago for myself personally. It wasn't something that I valued anymore. And once I'd now hit these numbers, all these things, like all of these things that I thought I needed, and those insecurities quietened. They probably didn't go, but they quietened because I'd felt like I'd proved them wrong at that level of my understanding. Everything just felt meaningless. I was looking at it and thinking, what's the point? And then everything started to change in my personal life. So then in my personal life, I started really falling off the rails. Like, I would say doing stuff that a man that lacks purpose does. I was on, and back here, there was Arab weekends, or I call it Arab weekends. I don't know if that's what they call. And then there's UK weekends, right? So back then in this year, because it changed like while I was there as well, but back then, Dubai weekends for the Dubai people would be Friday and Saturday, and then UK weekends was Saturday and Sunday as usual. I had Dubai friends and I had UK friends all in Dubai, right? So one of the main things that fucked me up was, because now I was living this life of like, I'd lost that vision and that purpose, and I was just enjoying that surface level like enjoyment and comfort, and I was just like being like what I would probably deem a normal person. I was drinking all the fucking time. I was drinking more than I wasn't drinking because of that weird weekend. It was Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then I'd be back into it on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday. Then we go again. So there was a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, a lot of like everything, one night stands, things like this, and a lot less of driving the business forwards. And eventually, this drove me to this point of realizing that I felt like I lacked purpose. And it drew me to this whole world of like men's work, psychology, of purpose. And I think this is pretty normal. I think when you tick these boxes of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you feel safe, you finally feel safe, because those insecurities made me not feel safe. So when I finally felt safe, I could look and realize, I don't feel like this is my self-actualization. I don't feel like this is it for me personally. And that put me down this long road of discovering my purpose and finding purpose. So I signed up with a hypnotherapist called Russell, and we went really deep into my everything, basically into everything. And finding out like my purpose. And this 9 months that I worked with him closely fucking changed changed me completely. There was so many parts of myself that I just didn't give a fuck about before, because of all I cared about was business. And I started to unravel that and see that, started to understand myself more. I got really into men's work. One of the most life-changing books that I read was what the fuck's it called? The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. I don't know if you've read that, but it changed. It was game changing. I look back to that all of the time. Even chapter 1 is There Is No Completion, which we referenced a second ago. And I looked into David Data. I wanted to work with him. I couldn't see how, but then he had this apprentice called John Wineland, who had worked underneath him for a very, very long time, learned all of his things. And I went and worked with John Wineland. So for then 10 months, and he works with men and helps them step into their masculinity, find purpose and all this. I worked with him for 10 months. I went all the way over to California in this men's group of 50 people, 50 guys, and we was doing this stuff together. And I was going so deep into this world, and I was learning about it every single day. And out of the other side of that, it changed me completely. And that's how I wanted to help other guys now. I looked at how I was. I looked at where I ended up when I did lack purpose. I looked at how a lot of other people that I know personally and not personally operate and live with this, especially men, with this lack of purpose. And that became my purpose. I wanted to help more people live with fucking direction, with power and purpose, and start to see how much they could actually do in this world if they start to back themselves and they start to actually step into their power, reclaim that, and actually have purpose. And without going on too long, that then became the business I wanted to build, and that fucked everything up. And I'll leave it on a cliffhanger. I'll let you talk now. I'll leave it on a cliffhanger there.
I was just about to ask the same thing. I was having this exact conversation earlier with someone, and it was the same thing. It was like the more you kind of level up, the more you try and take fitness at its core components, fitness content at its core components, and you try and talk about burnout, productivity, the more it's not the main offer. Like, how did you, what happened for you, I guess?
So I had to make the mistake, and I had to get burnt by it deeply. And I was fucking stubborn. And that's how I got to the other end. So initially, by the way, it went great. So my business had always been, because I think when it comes to fitness, more now than ever, but when it comes to fitness business, you need to stand out somehow. I think one of the best ways to stand out is by being able to not only sell the tangible result, but also to create, cultivate, and sell this aspirational identity. Like, who do they become when they're in your world? Who do they become when they work with you? Can you imply the kind of person that they're going to become and the kind of life that they're going to be able to build through working with you, more than just the fat loss or more than just the tangible fitness result? And I had done that pretty well up until that point. You know, it was all for guys. It was very entrenched in personal development and stuff like that. And then as I was going into this world, things were only getting better, right? Because as I was going into this world and I was starting that journey, it was all coming through into everything I was doing, and things were only getting better, right? I was talking about, without knowing it, I had created this aspirational identity of who they can become if they come step into my world. You know, there was certain things that I wouldn't necessarily coach on, but it would change in their life anyway, because I had this aspirational identity, this ideal and this idea of the person that they should be. And I know should's a weird word, but it's kind of how we need to operate within coaching. Is we come up with this idea of success, and they can decide if they want to step into that or not. And I had this ideal, and I was stepping into it too. I was on the way there too. You know, we was all going there together. And initially that was really, really helping in terms of sales, in terms of marketing, in terms of everything, in terms of delivery. I even had people that would come in and it wouldn't take long, and then I'd hear that they've completely stopped smoking weed, or they've completely stopped drinking, or they've completely stopped cocaine. And these certain things I didn't even know that they were doing, and I'd not even ever spoken to them about directly. It was just part of this ideal of being a man of high standards, this powerful man. So initially it helped, right? And then as I became more confident in this part of things, the men's work, the purpose stuff, the psychology stuff, the mindset stuff, as I became more confident in that and more deeply entrenched in learning all of that and around it and stuff like that, exactly like you said, I started to come away from the fitness. On the inside, I wasn't. The inside had everything that it had ever been around fitness, but on the outside, I'd started to come away from fitness. I was talking about it less. I was driving that home as the main tangible result less. All of these things. And that's when sales started to plummet, like they really did. And at that moment, I didn't know where to go because I knew I didn't want fitness to be the thing that I did anymore. I wanted to have this new impact and effect on people. I didn't necessarily want it to be fitness anymore. And I found myself in this very strange middle ground where I knew that my program was better. People came in and they said it changed their life completely. I still work with them to this day, and I help them build their business now. And they never had a business before, and it started completely changed everything. Right? They still work me to this day. They talk about how good it was, and I knew that it was because I'd never taken anything out. Everything that had built it up to this point within the program was still in there. It was only better. It was only upgraded. But on the outside, that wasn't seen because I was coming away from what had worked, and that created 2 years minimum of just having such a challenging time in business, like truly challenging time of money just going down and down and down, the money in my bank account just going down and down and down, and the monthly recurring revenue just going down and down and down, sales going down, and being frustrated because I was doing what I wanted to do. I was doing what I loved, and I felt purposeful. When I was locked in and I wasn't thinking about the situation, I felt purposeful, but it wasn't showing. It didn't seem to be having the effect that it seemed to have on my clients, and I was really confused. And I remember now, like over those 2 years, 2 years is a long time to be locked in. That's the only thing you're doing, and everything's fucking up. And over those 2 years, I've been in every boat. I didn't know what's wrong. I tried, going really hard on the marketing, and like I worked with someone and we did like ads and stuff like that. Didn't help. I tried all different. I was thinking, oh, maybe it's the content I'm doing wrong. I started doing all these different pieces of content, all these different styles. Started a podcast for about 1 episode or 2. All of these things, right? And nothing was changing. And that's when I eventually cracked it. But I'll leave it on a cliffhanger again, and I'll let you lead the way before I keep going, because I know I've talked for a long time.
That's it is so powerful in terms of like so many takeaways from that, and it potentially for a lot of coaches I've spoken to, and even just my story, I think a lot of times we get into it at like 18, 19, 17, maybe like young, like quite young, and then you change so much in like 2, 3, 4 years, like but you're still trying to post the same kind of content. So for you, like that what was so like your identity, was it tied into like, I don't want to be just the personal trainer and the online coach anymore? Was that kind of like the thought process in terms of I want to change because it's not in alignment, or like what was like, because the fitness was working, like I'm guessing any kind of logic, like any lifestyle person maybe listening would be like, why change it, Louis? Like it was working, kind of thing.
Yeah, that it got to the point, and this was getting to this was just from getting to those numbers that I had always thought that I
See.
wanted, and I do want, right? But getting to those numbers and realizing, okay, I know it's not even crazy numbers right now, but like back then in my perception it was, and I knew that nothing was going to change when it was multiplied, and I was like, well, okay, well, I've done that now, and I could grow this more, but it's not fulfilling me. It's not filling me with joy and excitement now that I've got to this number, and I know that the next numbers and the next numbers are going to do the same thing, and that's what pushed me to think, I can feel, well, initially I could feel a lack of something. Then once I realized what I wanted to do and the feeling I wanted to create in people, I could feel that call in me, and I knew I had to go for it, really. And during this whole thing, and this is probably going to be a really good takeaway for some people listening, especially if they can feel where I'm at here and what I'm talking about. And this is probably what I needed to hear back then. But as we've heard my story, I was very one-dimensional up until that point as well. I was very one-dimensional. It was all about business, and that was the only thing that I was doing. Luckily, it gave me joy and fulfillment, but that was the only thing I was doing. Without knowing it, I was deriving most of my personal needs of joy and fulfillment and all of that. I was deriving most of that from my business. And if you're listening, everyone, and you're thinking that you're maybe leaning closer to that one-dimensional side, it's probably you too. You're probably deriving a lot of the joy and the things that you want out of life out of your business itself. I was 1,000,000%. So as soon as things started to shift for me, I wasn't aware of that at that moment. So it felt wrong, right? Because I was getting all of my needs met, or most of my needs met from my business. So as soon as the business shifted, or I shifted, or one of these two things shifted, and there was a slight lack of alignment, it felt completely wrong to me. And I thought I had to change the business to get my needs met. Now, looking back, there is an argument to say, well, I could have just seen that as a job, and then I could have understood that I don't need to get all of my needs met or most of my needs met from the business. And I could have understood the needs that I wanted to get met, such as purpose and fulfillment and stuff like that. And I could have got that met elsewhere. I could have. That was a really big insight for me when I understood that with a coach that I was working with. And if I knew that back then, maybe things would have been slightly different. But I'm very happy with how it turned out anyway.
Yeah. And it's such a hard one because from a personality standpoint, it sounds like I'm similar, but it sounds like it's very obsessive towards one thing, one vehicle of doing things, and then you going all in on the new offer. You work. There's no doubt you've worked way harder. I imagine than if you just did as the other one as the job. Yeah. How did you fix the mess? So the mess of numbers, revenue, everything's going down.
Mm-hmm.
You're working hard on it. How did you actually fix that?
Yeah. So I tried everything. As I was saying, right, I tried everything, and I was just looking at all of the levers that I could pull, and I truly had no idea. I started to question myself. I was like, is there something wrong with me? And I was like, surely not. Come on. And I did it before. I was like, come on. And then I was like, well, am I not working hard enough? Because I saw other people winning. And that was a dangerous spiral because I was working too hard, if anything. And then I was just working harder and harder and harder and burning myself out and then feeling worse. And then, and then feeling worried about the business, and everything just spiraled worse. And then I would be in a horrible hole mentally and energy wise and everything else. So I tried everything, I felt like, up until this point, and I just didn't seem to be able to crack it. And I was just so uncertain of what was really happening here, until I started to look into the offer. And up until this point, right, I know everyone thinks when we say offer, they think, oh, the Alex Hormozi book, 100 million offer. I'd read that years ago. Well, not years ago. I'd read that year, I think, or the year before, when it had come out and it was getting big and stuff. I'd read that, but it never clicked for me. And I thought I'd done the things on it, right? And I did probably a few of them, but in my head still, and this is what I think a lot of people think about offers, they think it's a promotion that you put out, such as people think an offer is like, oh, I'm going to do an offer today, and it's like a post that you do on Instagram, and it's like, I'm looking for 5 people. They think that's the offer, or they think it is they say offer, and then actually really what they have is just simply a service that basically everyone else is selling at the same time. And what I realized was with what I wanted to sell and and how I wanted it to work, I'd missed the biggest detail, which was the offer. And let me give a bit of a context here, right? Because the way that I'd missed this, but I'd already done so well before, is because, and I think offers are getting more and more and more and more and more important since then, because there's more and more people and you need to stand out. But back then, without knowing this stuff, I'd been able to bypass it, because directly just kind of straight fitness is a little bit more intuitive. It's a bit more normal in people's minds. They kind of get that bit. You can do better, much better with a good offer, but people kind of get what they're getting from it and everything else. As I'd started to come away from that, I didn't realize it, but I started to like break every single rule in the book of like being able to create a good offer. So then when I realized that pretty much everything else around it was good, the content was good, the people like that I was putting in effort and everything else, the marketing was good, and it was just I was driving them all towards this place that they didn't want to go, or they not even didn't want to go, they didn't even really understand what it actually was. When I could tidy that up, things were able to change very, very, very quickly. And funnily enough, I started to look into, I'll tell you one thing that I think really shifted everything. And I really hope that someone else has the same effect that I had when I heard this. When I heard this one thing that I'm about to say, it changed everything. It truly did. Like, this was the moment that changed everything. And what I'd realized was this. With that, it was the Power Project, is that program where, it was all like that. With that, I was saying all these nice words, fancy words like purpose and all of this kind of stuff, potential and all of this. And I was a coach in my head. I was a coach, and I was operating like a coach, meaning coaches don't tell people what to do. They ask the right questions. They get the answer out of them. They help them go where they want to go. In marketing, that doesn't work very well because you're not talking to them yet, right? And in an offer, that doesn't work very well because they've not bought it yet, right? So when they're not in your world and working with you, you can't in your offer tell them we're going to take you where you want to go, because they don't know where they want to go, and they're not going to buy that. It's like, we're going to give you the car that you want. You're not going to buy that car because you don't know what car it is, So what I heard was this. I was watching a video, and it was like a workshop of an expert talking to someone. It was about offers. And the guy had his business, it was like called Life by Design. I was like, okay, this piqued my interest. I was like, okay, that's similar to mine. So it's not selling, right? The expert goes, what does it mean for you to have a life by design? What does it mean to you? Right? And the guy had to explain what it meant to him, right? Like, to the T. Like, here's what it actually meant for me to have a life by design. And he had to spell that out. It means that I actually have 3 days off a week or 4 days off a week. It means that I can have dinner with my family every single night. It means that I can have this. It means that I can have that. And he said, sell that, right? Instead of selling this nebulous, abstract idea that's just words that you're hoping that they fill in the gaps, you have to create the vision that you're going to take them to. And that takes a huge amount of ownership and leadership, because you have to own what it means to you, and you have to take them there. And creating that vision and that idea that they can actually step into and they can go to is the thing that gets them to be able to buy into it. And it gets them to even be able to make that decision of, do I want to go there or not? So I asked myself, because I'd always, with the Power Project, I always said, I want to help men take charge of their life and find purpose. So I had to ask myself, well, when I did that myself, because that could mean anything to anyone, right? Everyone's going to have different ideas of what it means to take charge of their life. Everyone's going to have a different idea of what it means to really find purpose. So it's a very hard thing to sell. So when I stepped back and I looked at, well, what did that mean for me personally? It was when I took my passion of training at that time and bodybuilding and all of that, And I was able to go into the embark on the journey of turning that into an online business. And then I realized that, and then I asked myself, I realized in my own mind, this is what I've secretly wanted all along. You know, when clients had come in and I was talking about helping them find their power and, getting their vision, I always secretly wanted them to come up with the vision of wanting to eventually leave their job and build a business, or build their business and stuff if they already left their job. And I always secretly wanted them to do that in a coaching capacity, like as a coach, because I knew that I could help them do that. Right. So I always knew this, but I wasn't aware of it, but that was there. I was like, oh, I've always wanted this, because we can never take our biases out of our coaching. Right. Which is why it's helpful to decide for them, because you're going to accidentally potentially push them that way anyway, if you're not careful. So I'd realized now, oh, this is kind of what I've always wanted anyway. Then, funnily enough, up until this point, I'd started fixing the problem a little bit. For the last maybe couple of months, I'd already started to fix that problem a little bit, and people were coming in. And then I looked at the last 8 people that had signed up to me. I just went through the intake form, and I'd realized that out of the 8, about 6 weren't there for the physical side anymore. They were there to find purpose and build an online business. It's like, oh, wait a second. So it started to go in that direction anyway. And then came the fearful part. Then came the part where I had to cut the umbilical cord of one thing that was messy, that I only had done because, I wanted all of that stuff. I loved all of that stuff and I wanted it all to work. And I had to step forwards in the way that I knew that I needed to, which was fearful, because I had to cut things out of the business that I still loved. But we can't just have a business that that's just all the shit that we like. That was basically one of the biggest problems. I just threw everything in that I liked. So I had to cut out part of the business that I love and make it clearer, at least on the outside. I did that, and that's when everything changed. It for the months leading up to that, I'd already started to be able to fix some things, but that's when I was really able to identify truly where I'd gone wrong and been able to make some changes.
With offer creation as well, people would look at the 4 boxes. The thing that comes to mind is the 4 boxes on Alex Hormozzi's book. Do this for 4 things. What's the step-by-step process you take to actually build out and create an aligned offer?
Yeah, so aligned offer is quite different, right? So when we have an aligned offer, it's an alignment of 3 things. We ensure that it is a business that you're doing something that really, really excites you. It's aligned with your passions and your values. On the other side, it's aligned with the life that you want as well. And then on the other side, it's aligned with the market and what the market wants. So all 3 of these are really important. So if we build something and the market wants it, and maybe even gives you the life that you want, but it's not actually, aligned with your passions and values, you're not going to be as good at it as other people. And don't know what that. You're not going to be as good at it as other people, and eventually you're not going to feel very fulfilled, right? And that's how I experienced it. So I experienced that side. So then I went all the way. I leant really hard into that side. I already had the life I kind of wanted at that point. I leant all the way into that side, but then I forgot the bottom bit. The market didn't necessarily want what I was selling. I just kind of created what I wanted. And then I thought, well, this will sort me out. And then, sales went down, bank account went down, Stripe didn't look too good anymore. And then it didn't work as well, right? And in the past, not at that moment, but it's different, I'd also lent into or lent away from the other one, which is the life you want. I built a business blindly following a mentor and just kind of did exactly what they kind of said without really thinking about the life that I wanted as well, which again creates a life that is very, very hard to be able, creates a business that's hard to be able to sustain and to be able to grow, because you've got all of these, because you're growing into pain, you're growing into something that you don't actually want, and it's not very in alignment. So the first thing we do before going into the actual pieces of the offer is we understand these things. What do you actually want? What are your passions and values, and how can we actually tie that in to the offer? Because that's one of the biggest parts. We have a really game-changing system called the Genius Stack, which allows us to unpack our genius, unpack our stories, the industries that we've been in, the spaces that we've been in, all of these things. We can unpack that and we stack it, right? So the more of these pieces that we can stack, the more aligned and the more unique this offer becomes and starts to become, right? So we start to understand that and we start to stack all of that together as well. We build it in a model that is actually the life that we want. And pretty much most of the guys inside the Align Coach, we're running a similar model that allows us to have a huge amount of flexibility, allows us to be creative, allows us to do it like that. So we need it to be running it in a model that we want. And then the bottom one, we make sure that it actually fits the market. So that's where we start to really get into the offer creation side of things. So on the offer creation side of things, there's many pieces. We could probably go on for ages, but I like to be, well, the main thing when it comes to the offer is the 3 Ps, right? Super simple: price, process, and promise. Most of people are fucking up on these things. Once we've got an actual unique idea, because most people haven't got the unique idea initially. So once we've got the unique idea is, who are you helping, right? And what's their pain? So what's the thing that they're trying to get around? And then what's that big problem that's actually stopping them from being able to get over it as well? So they might be fat or too fat, but then they're going to have different problems that are stopping them from being able to get past that, right? One might be a father and he's too fat because of that. One might be being yo-yo dieting and he's too fat because of that. One might be a 9-to-5 and so there's the pain and then there's the problem. And let's get clear on both of those. And then we get clear on where they're trying to go overall, right? That's where the promise starts to come in. So we can talk about, what are you actually going to give them, in what time frame, with or without something, and let's get that really, really clear. And let's make sure that that is really specific to the person that we're actually talking to. The problem that most people do, and this is simple stuff, but most people get this wrong because they overlook these simple bits, is they forget how important a promise is in their coaching, right? So they go a couple of ways. Number one, they just talk about all the different pieces of their coaching, right? Oh, we do mindset, we do the physical stuff. They talk about all of these different pieces, but they don't actually be able to articulate it in a way that, here's what you get, right? So they're talking about all these things, these nebulous things of like, we're going to give you training, but they don't say, here's what the result that you're actually going to get. The second thing is, they don't have a time frame on it, because especially fitness coaches are the worst for this, because a lot of them came from personal training, which is a service, and you can get away with a service because a lot of people come to you because it's convenient and stuff. They don't have a time frame either, right? When you don't have a time frame, they're just kind of basically paying for your they're paying for all the other bits, right? They're paying for the training, the nutrition, the app, all of this kind of stuff, which we all know we don't want to be kind of selling on that the value of that's not going to be too high. But think about it. If you were going to buy a car, and you went to the dealership and you said, I really want this car, I want it to look like this, and they said, cool, start monthly payments of £1,000 and you'll get it. And you're like, well, all right, cool, when am I going to get the car? And then they're like, you'll get it. Well, we need a long-term mindset, but you'll get it. We're going to work together, you'll get it. There's check-ins, we're going to talk to each other each week, but you'll get it. You're not going to want to buy that car, So being able to turn your actual service and the thing that they're receiving into a product, into like, they're paying for this, is the most important thing, which is the promise, right? So being able to turn it into, look, because here's the thing, when they believe you and they believe themselves, which are two different things as well. But once they trust you that you're good, and once they trust that they will do the work, the only other question is the promise, what you're promising them, is that worth the price? If the promise isn't clear enough and it's just like, I'm going to train you, well, then you're going to get training and stuff. It's hard to put a price on that. But if you're able to say, here's the exact result that we're going to get for you, it's a lot clearer. And, there's going to be there's probably only going to be coaches listening. So coaches, think about this. If you were going to work with a mentor and they had like this 90-day kind of offer thing, who would you rather work with? We're going to increase your monthly recurring revenue ridiculously over the next 90 days. or we're going to increase your monthly recurring revenue by 2,000 over the next 90 days. You probably prefer the second one. The first one sounds like a bigger number, probably, but it's ridiculous. It says ridiculously, but it's probably going to be, sounds more big, right? The second one's not that huge, 2K, but you know what you're getting with the second one, right? They've put their neck on the line and they've said a number, and you know that you can track it, and you know what you're getting with that one. You can now start to think a little more logically and think, cool, is that going to be worth the price? How's it going to work? And now you can start to think about that and actually make that decision. Whereas the other one, we're going to ridiculously grow your business over the next 90 days. You know, it doesn't mean anything specifically, and you can't make those decisions. And it's the same. Coaches are doing this all the time. You know, we're going to get you shredded, or we're going to get you in ridiculous shape, or all this kind of stuff. But it's just, it doesn't actually mean anything. So we need to get that promise right first, right? The promise. What are they actually getting from your offer? Now, really important when it comes to offers and when it comes to the promise and everything else, really important is people will hear this and they're probably already thinking this, the listeners probably already thinking this, it's like, but I don't want short-term people, you know, I don't want it to just be a small amount of time that we work together. I want to work with them longer term and all this kind of stuff. And you can. The offer is mainly just the way that we're packaging that front end. And we can do many different offers and we can get into all of that later, but the offer is just the way that you're packaging the front end, right? Once they're in, the offer barely matters anymore. You're still gonna, obviously, you know, you're gonna get them the promise and stuff, and that's still important unless it's spoken otherwise. But the offer's just the thing that gets them interested. They're like, oh, cool, they can buy into that. Once they're on the inside, let's say you gave them an 8-week thing and it's to lose like a stone in 8 weeks or whatever. Once they've come in, you don't stop at the 8 weeks. You know, you lose that stone, and then during that time, you're coaching them anyway, you're talking to them anyway, or however you do it, and you're being able to build that vision for them anyway, and you're being able to show them where's next. After the 8 weeks, they continue. We do this we use a model called the multi-tier offer, which is one offer, and then we've got multiple tiers so we can make more money from them and everything else. But that's the basic thing. People usually don't want to do that because they don't want the time frame thing. But actually, when you get them in, they don't have to leave. Another option, there's going to be 2 more little pieces here that I'll say. Number one is, a lot of the time offers are not working because they get too complicated. This was my problem. I'm talking from experience here as well because I did this. They get too complicated. We start to throw everything else in. Usually as coaches get better and coaches get more an in-depth knowledge of different things, they start to throw all of this other shit inside the offer and inside the promise that doesn't actually matter to the client. We always need to understand what level of awareness is your client at, and let's sell them the thing that they need at that level of awareness and understanding and sophistication. So it might be, so it's not that you don't have that stuff in your program anymore. It's just you don't talk about it in the offer. So maybe the first 8 weeks, maybe there's a lot of mindset stuff as well and all this stuff, but your clients don't necessarily, or your prospects don't necessarily think that that's important to them yet. Well, then instead of trying to make them think that's important to them, because that's going to be hard, that's a whole new idea that you need to sell them on. That's hard. Let's sell them on what they think they need on that front end. So give them that 8 weeks and give them the fat loss bit once they're in, because that's just the packaging. Start to seed in this mindset stuff. And then after that 8 weeks, that's potentially where you start to work with them on the mindset stuff and the lifestyle stuff and stuff like that. And you can have this longer term journey planned out for them, but you just need to focus on selling them on that front thing. The second piece, and this, I know I could go on for hours on this, so I'll do the final thing. Obviously, there's price in those 3 Ps, but the second piece is the process. Process is so important. It's so important, and this is where a lot of people just start to say all the features, right? Training, nutrition, blah, 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 blah. You get an app. We have weekly check-ins, all of this shit. The process really wants to be, okay, you've told them this promise. You know, you've told them that you're going to be able to get them over their yo-yo dieting forever and get them dropping 20 pounds in 90 days. Now you need to back that up. Now you need to give them the pathway or the process and show them, how do you actually do that? And not, you get to talk to me, but what have you actually created? What have you actually set up that actually allows you to do that with them, right? And that's the process. We break the process down to 3 phases, which makes it really, really simple. We say phase 1, and then we explain exactly what they're going to do in phase 1, or exactly what we're going to do for them in phase 1. Phase 2, exactly how that's going to work, and phase 3. A really important part of the process to be able to turbocharge everything really is you throughout the process, and then within your program as well, and then through everything else once it's created. We want a unique mechanism, the unique way that you get people results. Because if you're just talking about the same way that everyone else does it, then you're against everyone else. The best thing that you can do once all of this is created and the offer's created and stuff is understand that specific problem that people have. As we said, could it be their 9 to 5 is stopping them losing weight? Could it be that they're a dad and it's stopping them? And then we create a specific solution for just them, and we turn it into your unique mechanism. That might be a unique thing. That might be a unique pathway of those 3 phases. It might be a unique methodology, such as like behavior engineering. Maybe the way that you get the results is behavior engineering. Most of the time, this is getting things like multiple things that already exist. You're not really recreating the wheel or anything. You're getting things that already exist, and you're being able to take them, and you're being able to brand it in your own way. So you can say to people, the reason that you've not got results is not because you haven't tried, not because of this, it's because you haven't had this thing. And that thing is their unique mechanism, right? And now when we've got all of this, right, when we've got this nice productized offer on the front end where they've got a time frame, they've got a promise, it's clear who it's to, and it's clear the price, they know when they're going to get the thing by. As they look into the offer or they speak to you, you're running them through all of this process of like, look, here's exactly how it works. We're going to do this and this and this. And inside the Align Coach, we don't just, we create a true journey for the client. It's a specific solution created specifically for that client to specifically get them over their specific problem and get them to the outcome that we promised them. So it's not just boring weekly check-ins and stuff. We tell them exactly how we're going to do every single part of it over that 3-stage process. Within that 3 phases, we've got the unique mechanism tied in. And once that's done, and there's way more to the offer as well, and then the offer's continually added on. But once that's done and that works, and really with offers, we're always iterating, we're always making it better. But once that's done, it changes everything, because now everything else in your ecosystem of business, your content and everything is just a roadmap to drive back to the offer, right? So now, because you've got all of these specific pieces, the problem that you get people over, the pain that you solve, the mechanism, your unique mechanism that you do that, the phases, all of your content can nod towards that. You're not just talking about random information anymore. You're actually being able to nod towards your specific ways of doing things. So now this is where content becomes actual marketing, because you're actually trying to sell them on something, like ideas of things, so they can actually eventually buy into your thing. So this is why inside the Align Coach, and what I'm always just talking about in content, is you have to start with the offer. Most people start the other way around. They start doing content and everything else, but there's too many variables that way, right? And you don't know what you're actually trying to sell yet. So when you have the offer, you create it and you can sell that, and you can get good feedback, and you've got people inside the program now. It creates this flywheel, and that just starts to spread out into everything else. That's when we start to build the ecosystem, and everything starts to tick over nicely.
Powerful, because that's the mistake kind of I hear as well a lot, is it or problem I hear a lot from coaches. It would be like, I'm speaking to people in my DMs, or I'm speaking to people on sales calls, but these people are not who I want to work with, or like they're not aligned with where I want to go, and it's more because they create the content first, and then people actually ask, so what do you do? And that's when you have to like make up the offer each time based on the people you're speaking to. In terms of like I guess a good one here would be in terms of taking that initial like offer, I guess, and so like a lot of times for myself, more in kind of coaches, it's sometimes you kind of feel like like my ego is like your ego gets in the way. Sometimes you're like, oh, I'm too good to just talk about this one kind of small narrowed promise, and that's kind of where you need to separate yourself out a little bit, and doing it the way you've done it is so much easier, because it's like it's all anchored towards it, and you've got so much more to lean in. You're not just like, I'm too good, I don't want to just talk about like the one sentence in my bio kind of thing. Have you found that similar, or is that kind of the easiest way to?
Yeah. So what we do is so the offers that we create, we usually go through this way of doing it in terms of, we'll create a shorter term offer first of all. So it might be 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks. As we said, for everyone listening, that you still work with people longer afterwards, we just create this. This is just the initial thing to test the hypothesis of what it is out, right? When we create the offer, we put it out. Most people get this. Well, most people fuck up at this point because they think about offers. Maybe they read 100 million offers and shit like that, and they thought, oh, we'll put this offer together. And then all they really do is change their bio and maybe slightly change their messaging in their content. And then they just wait. They just wait until people come to them. And then they're like, that's them testing out the offer. That's not ideal. That's not very good. And most people in this situation as well, they're looking at the engagement they're getting in content, and they're thinking that's feedback for their offer because they've just slightly changed their messaging and stuff. When really, content is literally the furthest away that you can get from the offer. It goes, you got followers, then you got leads, then you got customers, then you've got clients that are actually in your offer. So like, the content is the furthest away kind of feedback you can get. It's the worst feedback you can get for it. What we do, first of all, is we have this short-term thing, and we have a strategy to literally go and validate it like that. So we can go and get it in front of a certain amount of people and track everything. We track how many people we get it in front of. We don't get it in front of too many either. We look at the close rate. A lot of the people that we work with, myself included, don't do sales calls anymore either. We sell for an ugly little Google document. It keeps everything consistent as well. When the offer's good enough, you don't need a sales call, especially when you set everything else up like we do. And we look at the close rate and we look at the feedback that we're getting back, right? Once we start to sell into this, what we do is we then extend it out. So let's say it was a 12-week program initially, right? We've validated that 12-week promise. We've validated the 12-week process. We've validated everything that made that offer an offer. Now we take that 12 weeks and we extend it to 12 months. There's no commitment for 12 months, but now we extend that 12-week program to like, here's where we're going in 12. This is what it would feel like for the prospect hearing. It's like, here's where we're going to go over the next 12 months. Here's exactly what that's going to look like over the next 12 weeks, right? So we're selling them on the front end that this is a 12-month journey, or however long we choose to make it, right? I'm just saying we extend it. They're not committed to 12 months by any means. They're not committed, but it shows them like how far we're going to go with this. And then that initial core offer is those first 12 weeks. So eventually we can start to draw this out, right? But when it comes to talking about the same thing and stuff like that, this is where people get a bit mixed up, because one of the things that I'm always telling people is make an offer a day. Make offers every single day to your audience and always be selling. Most coaches are doing the opposite. They've got one offer or one program, and they will make an offer. They'll do the launch and stuff. They'll do the promotion like once, and they'll push that, and they'll make a good amount of sales. And then because that's the only thing that they can sell, then they'll stop selling. They'll usually just go back to posting and hoping, and then they'll stop selling for about 2 months. Really, they'll just stop selling until they feel safe enough to kind of like do another one. And they get big amounts of sales, and then things go quiet. Big amounts of sales. What we do, we call it the sales rhythm. And we run this sales rhythm constantly. What it means is we can sell every single day. We can sell a different thing, and we can actually tap into all the different corners of the market. We do this in a way that is really leveraged, because we actually focus on creating for the community that we have, like our clients. And then and I teach all the clients to do exactly the same thing. Then we focus for the clients, we create this stuff for the community, we leverage that, we take certain parts of that out, and then we use that as the offer on the next thing. So to answer your question of like, does it get boring having to like talk about the same thing? We actually don't, because what we realize is a sale is made when you can articulate the solution that matches your prospect, what your prospect believes to be their problem. Okay, that's when a sale is made. When you've just articulated your solution in the way that your prospect believes that they have a problem. And we all know that most of the time the prospect's not even right on like what they believe their problem is, but we still have to work with that when it comes to making the sale. So when we understand that, right, then like it's just like online coaches will know this. You'll get leads, fitness coaches, you'll get leads, or people talking to you, or you'll message them and then they say, oh, I just need a training program, really. I don't need the rest of it. I just need a meal plan, or I just need help with my nutrition. They don't need the rest of it. That's their perception. So they're seeing this overall kind of thing, and they're thinking in their head, I don't need all of that. I just need one thing. So when we only sell one thing, and we end up articulating in the same way, and we end up only really going for that one corner of the market. Maybe your one thing is like a mid-price thing and a mid kind of touch thing. So it like, as in like intimacy thing with the client. So again, we're only really touching that one corner of the market that's really wanting those things. So what we do, and this allows us to not get bored of what we're selling. This allows the audience to not get bored of what we're selling. It allows us to sell every single day, is every single week. And I'll just talk from my perspective because it's a bit easier. Every single week, I will go into the week and I will be selling something new, right? And the thing that I choose to sell will always lead people back to the main offer. So, whatever it is, it's just a thing that can show value. People pay for it. It raises hands. And then I know, and I call this turning leads into customers. And then I know from the customers, I know who's going to have the highest intent to eventually become a client. Currently, if someone becomes a customer, for me personally, there's a 60% chance they're going to become a client in the next 2 weeks, or pretty much instantly. So every single week, I will go in to the week and I will have a new thing that I'm going to sell. The thing is selected upon the different corners of the market. So the way that we look at the corners of the market is price and intimacy. There's low price or free, and then there's really fucking high price. There is a pre-recorded video on the lowest end of intimacy versus literally meeting in person for hours and working on something, right? And usually the intimacy and the price are going to scale up hand in hand. When we've only got one thing to sell, we're only selling to one tiny section of the market, which is the certain intersection of wherever your price and intimacy kind of intersect. But everyone wants different things at different times. There might be a new follower, and they might not actually be ready for anything other than a very small price thing. There might be a follower, new or not, but he's had enough of group things and low touch point things, and he actually only wants a deep intimacy things, even if it is going to take him paying a lot. Both of those people in both corners of the market aren't going to want your core product most likely, because your core product's probably somewhere in the middle. So again, what we do, and what I do, is I'll go into the week and I'll ensure that I'm going on all different areas of the spectrum and all different corners. So there'll be a free thing. Then there'll be a £97 thing, nothing, just a one-off. Then there'll be an in-person consulting thing where we meet in person and we actually do it together. All of these different things. So then it's high touch, low touch, free, paid, all of these different things. But every single one is designed to drive people back to the core offer at some point, or it might be like the consulting thing, which certain people need that as opposed to the core offer because they just want to have that conversation. But either way, it's making me money, it's making people results, and it does drive people back to the core offer. At that same point, I'm talking about the different corners of the market, but I also end up talking about the different corners of my own program. So obviously in my program, I'm using just myself for an example, but we'll touch on content creation, offer creation, sales, marketing, client delivery and program creation, all of these different things. Someone might think they just need a help on one of those things. So when I go into next week and I've got something specifically about client delivery and program creation for clients, well, then that's going to get someone's hand raised who's been looking at my stuff, but he hasn't been interested in anything else because all he thought he needed was that, not help on offer creation, not help on marketing. He just needed that. So there's someone that I didn't even know exists that's now raising their hand after weeks and weeks and weeks of them seeing my thing, because I'm slightly changing how I'm articulating my value. And that's what we teach the guys to do inside the aligned coach as well. And that's how we have the one offer, but we're selling it every single week, and we're selling it in different ways, and we are always being able to make sales. One of my clients, by the way, just because this is just from today, he closed his doors last week. He sold out his spaces. He closed his doors. Then the next day, he said, "Who wants to be on the wait list?" Right? Because he closed his doors. He's not full by any means. He just decided to close his doors because that's what we do. Because in the Aligned Coach, we talk about being the leader. We're being the boss, not being, pushed around by the market. We closed the doors, said the next day, we don't know when the doors are open, wait list. A load of people came through with the wait list. People that he never knew existed, right? Raising their hand for the wait list. Guess what? He's selling them today. He's getting them on calls and selling them today because it's just different ways for people to come in and different ways to find out that people exist. When you're only selling the same thing, people will decide maybe years ago, weeks ago, that they're not in, and they'll come up with their own conclusions. Last one, that example of this, like in play, is in my own thing. I had someone reach out when I had my spaces open, and she said that she wanted to potentially join. Can I have the information? I sent her over the information, and she said, I just don't feel like I'm ready to, pay that price for my coaching yet. I said, no worries. Where are you at the moment? What was your problem? Like, what did you want help with? Why did you raise your hand? She said it was this one thing. I said, cool. Well, I've got this option where we can actually just meet on Zoom, and we can have, you can pay for just some consulting if it's just this thing you want to fix. And she said, cool, yeah. We did that. And guess what? By the end of the call, she was asking to join because I was able to bring her closer into my world. And then I was able to show her real value. Like, all that free shit that people are always putting out doesn't show real value. I was able to actually solve her problem, get paid for it, and show real value. By the end, she asked to join the program because now she realized that actually it was what she needed. And actually, through talking to her personally, it was because she thought, you need to make a new offer when you join, when you don't. And I was able to explain that on the call, and then she was in. So, yeah, big long answer, but I think that will probably be the most valuable piece for a lot of people listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Because so many times in my own coaching story, like in my own coaching journey, like you go down the rabbit hole of what I'm gonna do is look at the little corners of the market, the people, and what I'm gonna do is just hammer home how bad doing this thing, this low ticket thing is, or how bad doing this thing is, and I'm gonna try and repetition, eventually get people to know you shouldn't do the low touch point thing, you shouldn't do Slimming World, you shouldn't do whatever, and you should go. But the other option is you can just meet them where they're at, listen, like you say, listen a little bit more intensely. But I guess so much of that comes from having that energy in the first place, like you mentioned, not being so head down, like negative energy kind of fuel, and actually listening to people and just hearing what they want and making it happen.
I find as well with what you were saying, there's a lot of judgment a lot of the time around this stuff, and I had it as well in terms of, you may think, funnily enough, everyone loves putting out free shit, but then when it comes to putting out something that's low price, they're like, oh no, that's going to attract people that haven't got much money. You're putting out free shit, that really attracts the people with no money. Anyway, a lot of the time it comes with a lot of judgment of people thinking, if I put out cheap things, like low price things, I'm going to attract people that want low price. Just in my and I get that as well. I get where that's coming from. Of course, it almost makes sense, right? But in my experience, it doesn't work that way. It hasn't for me, at least. My higher level clients have actually come through lower price things, and I think it's because when people get to a higher level, they start to think they just need one piece. They start to think they just need one piece of the puzzle, and there's just one thing missing. So they get that one piece. It's not about the price. It's about that they didn't think they needed the whole thing. They get that one piece, and then they realize the value, and then they actually end up in the whole thing because they realized that there's a piece of the whole thing that they should be in there for. Like I think just today I had someone pay for a £47 product, which is not very much. And it's, these things aren't to make money. They're to be able to show value, identify who's going to be a high intent buyer, and then be able to have conversations and potentially, work with them on a deeper level. But only once you understand why did they buy that in the first place. They've spent £47. What did they want from this? And then you can see, can I solve this on a deeper level? Anyway, I'm pretty sure he's done 120k months, and he's buying a £47 thing. So it doesn't go hand in hand. It's not like, oh, you do low prices, you're going to attract low people. It actually doesn't work like that.
And that's where, like, especially like you mentioned, the higher up, like you say, sometimes I find a higher up, sometimes people, you go up trying to, the higher up people are trying to solve a particular problem, the more they've done loads of stuff already to try and solve the little things, and they're like, oh, I've got something else to solve, kind of thing now.
Yeah.
So what, I know you've touched on it in throughout this, but what is it exactly like? What is your line offer now? What is your promise? What is it you do for coaches and business owners now?
Yeah, so I help coaches and consultants, and I help coaches and consultants build their business to six figures with a simple business, with one person who is yourself, no big teams, with one main platform and one main organic funnel, which we can put ads onto if we want. And it's really simple. I pretty much help people build the business in the way that they actually want. They build an offer that they absolutely love because they're finally expressing themselves and they're putting their pieces of themselves in there in a way that actually makes the offer more effective. They're running the business in the way that they want, which most of the time the people that join me, they want to have this community of clients that they are able to be creative for, they're able to create for, and then we build this ecosystem out where there are offers and pieces for every single level of the market. So the coach can focus on what they do best, which is being creative and coaching their clients and documenting that. And that almost automatically starts getting us new leads and clients every single day, and new leads and customers every single day, and new clients every single week.
Amazing. And the last one, I might have mixed up the order of the flow, the last question, but the last kind of question I thought would be really good to wrap up on is, you mentioned right at the beginning that you were having this kind of conversation, with your dad about kind of getting into coaching, getting into business creation. Like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to die trying, kind of thing. What's one lesson looking back on that journey you'd give to your like younger self in terms of going through the like roller coaster of the last 10 years or however long it's been?
Well, boring footnote to this answer is I wouldn't actually tell him anything because I'm happy where we are, and we've all seen the time travel films. We don't want to fuck that up. But if I had to, using my wisdom now, I'd go back to him and I'd tell him that I'd just tell him to relax, like the only thing that could have stopped me, other than dying, the only thing that could have stopped me, and I knew it wouldn't have ever stopped me, but the only thing that could have stopped me was the expectation of where I should have been, right? And anyone else listening that may feel that way, and we can all still feel like it now. The only thing that really stops us is, if you want the thing, the only thing that can really stop us is the expectation of where we should be. And that comparison between where you think you should be and where you are. And when we're not closing that gap quick enough, that's when you have thoughts of stopping. So I tell him, and I'm more talking to anyone else that's in that specific situation now, is realize that, like step away from being your mind and be the witness and see that for what it is. The only pain and suffering in this moment is coming from the gap that you're creating between where you are and where you think you should be. And when you take that away and you realize that this shit isn't linear, and you realize that things can change so quickly, and you realize that there's no fucking end point, there's no completion to this game, and it's just what we fucking do, you can relax a little bit more and you can be a little bit more flowy in what you do.
Where can people find you from here?
Yes, so the best place to actually find me, guys, is jumping on my email list. Every single morning, I sit right here, I have a coffee, and I write an email and I send it to your inbox every single morning. I write it that day and I fucking love it. The best place to jump on that is www.thealignedoffer.co.uk. If you go there, you're also going to get a 20-minute training going into aligned offers. And enjoy the emails. They're fucking great. On top of that, Instagram is Louis Joe Calvert, which hopefully you'll be able to write somewhere so I don't have to spell it out. And I'm also on LinkedIn, Louis Joe Calvert.
The relevant links, so on YouTube, the relevant links will be around this, like down below in the description and stuff, so you can just click on the email list. Louis, thank you so much for jumping on. So much value, so much different stuff from mindset, psychology to offer creation and business and marketing.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun. It went slightly different to I thought in terms of the story and everything. I love it. So thanks so much, man.
Yes, it's really, really powerful.